The German Shepherd's barks rang out across the hectic Terminal 1 of Manchester Airport, sharp and unyielding, its teeth flashing in a fierce snarl. Sarah Thompson, 7 months pregnant, stood rooted to the spot, her hazel eyes wide with terror. Travelers swarmed around her, their curious stares flicking between the dog and the shaking woman. Sarah's hand cradled her swollen belly, fingers gripping the soft fabric of her navy coat. The air crackled with tension, her heart pounding as she stammered, barely audible over the dog's growls. Dog goes wild barking at pregnant woman. But when security uncovers the truth, it's beyond belief. "Please, stop it," she begged, her voice trembling as she looked around for help. But Titan, the sleek black and tan security dog, wouldn't back down. His deep, rumbling barks echoed off the shiny floor, his muscles tense, eyes fixed on Sarah like she was hiding something dangerous. James Carter, a seasoned security officer with a faint Manchester accent, swapped a cautious look with his team. He'd worked with Titan for years and trusted the dog's instincts completely. Trained to detect drugs, explosives, and weapons, Titan never barked for no reason. But today, something about his behavior felt off. Unnerving. James's brow creased as he watched Sarah. Her pale face, wide eyes, and shaky hands stirred his sympathy, but Titan's reaction kept him on edge. Was she hiding something? Could she be a risk to the hundreds of passengers bustling through the duty-free shops? His head was spinning. A stocky officer with a shaved head and a stern look stepped forward. "Miss, we need to have a quick word," he said, his tone steady but firm, carrying quiet authority. Sarah's face went ghostly white, her skin almost see-through under the bright terminal lights. "I don't get it," she whispered, her voice breaking with panic. "I haven't done anything." The crowd started whispering, some throwing suspicious glances, others looking sorry for her. A lad nearby whipped out his phone, filming the drama, making the atmosphere even more charged. James's pulse raced. He trusted Titan completely, 3 years together, and the dog had never been wrong. Once, Titan sniffed out drugs in a businessman's suitcase, leading to a big arrest. But now, this was a pregnant woman from Leeds, her fear so real it was hard to ignore. Was it a mistake? James gritted his teeth, caught between duty and doubt. "Let's take her for a quick check," he decided, nodding to his team. "We need to sort this out." 2 officers in navy uniforms stepped toward Sarah, their movements calm but confident. One lightly touched her elbow, guiding her forward. "This way, miss," he said, his voice softer to ease her nerves. Sarah nodded, her breathing fast and shallow. She hugged her belly tightly, as if protecting her unborn baby from something unseen. "Please," she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. "I don't know what's going on." James followed, keeping Titan on a short lead. The dog's eyes stayed glued to Sarah, ears pinned, hackles up. There was something almost human in his focus, like he was screaming, "Pay attention!" The security room at Manchester Airport's Terminal 1, tucked near the bustling Costa coffee stand, was a bleak, sterile box, grey walls, a metal table, and a couple of wobbly chairs. It reeked faintly of antiseptic, and the fluorescent lights gave everything a harsh, clinical sheen. Sarah Thompson sat slumped on a chair, her hands clasped over her belly, her breathing shaky. Titan, just outside the glass door, was agitated, scratching at the floor and letting out low, worried whines. James Carter stood close, his eyes darting between Sarah and the dog. He'd never seen Titan this rattled. Normally, the German Shepherd was pure focus, calm, sharp, always spot on. But now, it was like Titan was desperate to warn them about something no one else could sense. A young officer, Emma Wilson, her dark hair tied in a tight bun, carefully searched Sarah's handbag. She laid out the contents on the table, a battered leather purse, a cracked iPhone, a Boots own-brand tissue pack, a half-empty Tesco water bottle. Nothing suspicious. Emma looked at Sarah, her face softening. "Any medical conditions we should know about, love?" she asked, her Manchester accent gentle, trying to calm Sarah's nerves. Sarah shook her head, her voice a faint murmur. "Just the pregnancy. 7 months along," she said, but her words wobbled, like she wasn't sure herself. Her fingers knotted together, and she shifted uncomfortably, her eyes flicking to the door where Titan's shadow loomed. Outside, Titan paced, his claws tapping the tiles. He let out a sharp bark, then a deep growl, his nose twitching like he was chasing an invisible scent. James's stomach twisted. This wasn't right. He recalled when Titan had sniffed out explosives in a suitcase that had dodged every scanner. That day, the dog had saved lives. But now, if Sarah wasn't hiding anything, what was Titan picking up? He couldn't shake the worry. Another officer, a lanky lad named Tom, readied a handheld scanner for Sarah's body. His movements were cautious, like he felt the oddness of it all. The room felt thick with tension, the silence pierced only by Titan's muffled whines. Then, out of nowhere, Sarah gasped, doubling over. Her hands clutched her belly, her face contorting in agony. She drew a sharp breath, her fingers digging into her coat. "Something's wrong," she whispered, her voice thick with fear. Sweat glistened on her forehead, her eyes wild with panic. Everyone stopped dead. James's heart jolted. He'd seen fear, but this was raw, desperate. Sarah's breathing turned ragged, her body shaking. "Call an ambulance. Now," James shouted, turning to Tom. "Hang on, I'm on it." Tom stammered, fumbling for his radio, his hands trembling as he called for help. Sarah gripped her belly tighter, her face white as a sheet. "Please, help me," she whimpered, her voice cracking. Her eyes locked on James, begging for hope. Titan's whines grew frantic, almost anguished, as if he could feel her pain through the door. James glanced at the dog, his chest tight. Whatever was happening, Titan had sensed trouble from the start. But what? The question burned as the seconds dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Sarah Thompson's legs wobbled, and she struggled to stand before sinking back into the chair, her body shaking as pain tore through her. Her eyes, wild with fear, darted around the Stark security room at Manchester Airport's Terminal 1, just past the W.H. Smith shop. Titan, outside the glass door, clawed at it frantically, his whines rising to desperate yelps. James Carter's heart raced as he watched Sarah grip her belly, her breaths short and panicked. The room felt heavy, everyone frozen with fear. "It's too early," Sarah gasped, tears pouring down her face, her hair plastered to her sweaty forehead. "Please, save my baby." The door flew open, and a paramedic team rushed in. 2 men and a woman in bright orange jackets, their faces taut with urgency. The lead medic, a stocky man named Paul with a graying beard and calm eyes, dropped to his knees beside Sarah. "Stay with us, love," he said, his voice steady but urgent. "We're getting you to hospital now." He checked her pulse, his fingers quick but gentle, while his colleague, a young woman with a tight ponytail, pulled a portable monitor from a medical bag. James stepped back, giving them room, but his eyes stayed on Sarah. Her face was ashen, her lips quivering. Titan's yelps grew sharper, almost frantic, as if he felt the danger spiking. Emma, the security officer, lingered nearby, her hands twisting nervously. "She gonna be okay?" she whispered to Tom, who shook his head, his face pale. "Dunno, mate, it's mental," Tom muttered, staring at the paramedics. Paul's face tightened as he pressed a hand to Sarah's belly, checking for movement. His expression grew grim, and he shot a quick look at his colleague. "Her pulse is erratic," he said quietly. "Blood pressure's crashing. We need to move." The female paramedic nodded, prepping a stretcher fast. "Let's go," she said, her voice sharp with focus. Sarah moaned, her hands clutching the chair's armrests, knuckles white. "My baby," she whimpered, her voice fading. "Please, don't let my baby die." James's chest ached. This wasn't about security anymore, it was about 2 lives on the line. He glanced at Titan, now lunging against his lead, eyes fixed on Sarah. The dog's behavior wasn't aggression, it was pure desperation. James realized Titan hadn't sensed a threat like drugs or explosives. It was something medical, something no one else had caught. Paul stood, his face grave. "She's bleeding inside," he said, his voice low but urgent. "Something's torn. If we don't get her to surgery now, we'll lose them both." James froze, the words hitting hard. Titan had known. Somehow, that dog had sensed a danger no scanner or human could spot. The room blurred as the paramedics lifted Sarah onto the stretcher, her cries weakening. "Hold on, love," Paul said, gripping her hand. "You're going to be all right." Titan let out a piercing howl, yanking so hard James nearly lost his grip. The dog's eyes were wild, his body shaking with urgency. James's throat tightened. Titan wasn't just a dog, he was a hero, fighting to save Sarah and her baby in a way no one else could. The chaos exploded like a storm in Manchester Airport's Terminal 1. Paramedics rushed Sarah Thompson's stretcher through the packed concourse, their orange jackets gleaming under the lights, the smell of fresh coffee from Pret a Manger lingering in the air. Sarah's face was ghostly, her eyes half shut, her breaths weak and uneven. James Carter ran alongside, clutching Titan's lead as the German Shepherd surged forward, his whine slicing through the noise of gawking travelers. Security officers yelled, clearing a path past suitcases and stunned passengers. The air crackled, every second dragging on. "Clear out, quick!" Tom shouted, his lanky frame pushing a trolley aside. Sarah's hand slipped from the stretcher's edge, her fingers shaking. Paul, the lead paramedic, jogged beside her, checking her vitals on a portable device. "Stay with us, love," he urged, his voice calm despite the madness. "We're nearly there." Titan's eyes stayed locked on Sarah, his ears pinned, his body rigid with purpose. James's heart thumped. He'd seen Titan at work before, sniffing out drugs in a backpack at a music festival, saving countless lives. But this was different. Titan wasn't chasing a criminal. He was fighting for a mother and her unborn child. James felt pride tangled with dread. Would they make it in time? The paramedics weaved past a family hauling oversized luggage, dodging a queue at Pret a Manger. Sarah let out a faint moan, her head tilting to one side. "My baby," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. The female paramedic, her ponytail swinging as she ran, secured an oxygen mask over Sarah's face. "You're doing great," she said, her tone firm but kind. "Just hang on." James glimpsed passengers staring, some muttering, others filming on their phones. The weight of the moment crushed him. This wasn't just a job now. Titan's fierce focus, his desperate whines, had changed everything. That dog had sensed a crisis no one else could, and now 2 lives hung in the balance. They burst through the terminal's exit, the sharp Manchester air hitting like a slap. The ambulance stood ready, blue lights flashing, siren poised to scream. Paramedics slid Sarah's stretcher inside, Paul climbing in after her. "We're heading to Manchester Royal Infirmary," he shouted to James. "It's touch and go." Sarah's eyes flickered, and she turned her head weakly toward Titan. Her lips trembled, forming a faint word. "Thank you," she whispered, her gaze on the dog. Titan gave a soft whimper, his body tense but his eyes gentler, as if he understood. James's throat tightened. He patted Titan, his voice rough. "Good lad," he murmured. "You did it." The ambulance doors slammed, and the vehicle sped off, its siren tearing through the night. James stood rooted, Titan panting beside him, as the blue lights faded toward the city. His mind raced. Would Sarah and her baby make it? He glanced at Titan, whose ears twitched, still alert, as if waiting for what came next. Back inside, the terminal hummed with gossip. Passengers swapped tales about the pregnant woman and the dog who wouldn't stop barking. James ignored them, his thoughts with Sarah. He led Titan to a quiet corner, the dog's claws tapping the floor. They'd done all they could. Now, it was up to the doctors. James Carter sat on a hard plastic chair in the quiet corridor of Manchester Royal Infirmary, the sterile smell of disinfectant mixing with the faint hum of vending machines nearby. Titan lay at his feet, his black and tan fur rising and falling, but his ears flicked at every sound. Footsteps, a door slamming, nurses' murmurs. James's hands rested on his knees, his fingers tapping nervously. His mind replayed the airport chaos. Sarah's pale face, her desperate pleas, Titan's relentless barking. Had they been fast enough? The weight was killing him, every minute dragging on. Titan lifted his head, nudging James's knee with his nose, his dark eyes meeting James's. The dog's steady presence calmed him, like always. James scratched behind Titan's ears. "You're a proper hero, mate," he said softly, his Manchester accent thick with emotion. "You knew something was wrong before any of us." The hospital corridor was bleak, its white walls and flickering lights a stark contrast to the airport's buzz. James thought about Sarah, about the baby she was fighting for. He'd seen Titan sniff out danger before: drugs, weapons, even a knife at a football match. But this, sensing a medical emergency? It was beyond anything he'd witnessed. How had Titan known? The thought sent a shiver through him, a mix of awe and gratitude. A nurse, a young woman with kind eyes and a clipboard, approached. "You're with the dog, aren't you?" she asked, her voice soft but curious. James nodded, his throat tight. "Aye, that's us. Any news on Sarah?" The nurse smiled faintly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's tough, but she's with the best," she said. "That dog of yours, he's something else." James gave a small smile, glancing at Titan, who tilted his head as if listening. "He's one of a kind," he said, his voice rough. The nurse handed him a folded note. "Sarah asked me to give you this before they took her in," she said. She was barely conscious, but she insisted. James's hands shook as he unfolded the paper. The handwriting was wobbly, but the words hit hard. "Tell Titan he's my guardian angel." He stared at the note, his eyes stinging. He cleared his throat, looking at Titan. "Hear that, lad?" he whispered. "You're her angel." Titan let out a soft huff, his tail giving a single wag, as if he understood. James folded the note, slipping it into his pocket. It felt heavier than it should, like a promise to Sarah, her baby, and Titan. Hours dragged on. James stayed put, Titan curled up beside him. The hospital's hum, beeping monitors, hushed voices, faded away. He thought about the day, Titan's instincts, how close they'd come to tragedy. He'd always known Titan was special, but this was almost miraculous. The corridor doors swung open, and a doctor emerged, his scrubs creased, his face etched with exhaustion. James leapt up, his heart pounding. The doctor's eyes met his, and a tired smile appeared. "She's going to be okay," he said, his voice warm. "Sarah and the baby, they've stopped the bleeding. They're both stable." James exhaled, relief washing over him. Titan's ears perked, and he let out a quiet whine, as if he'd been waiting for those words all along. The hospital corridor at Manchester Royal Infirmary glowed under fluorescent lights, the sharp tang of disinfectant lingering. James Carter leaned back in his plastic chair, rubbing his tired eyes as the doctor's words echoed. "Sarah and the baby, they're both stable." Titan, curled at his feet, sighed softly, his ears twitching at the faint clatter of a trolley down the hall. James's hand rested on Titan's head, fingers tracing his fur. The note from Sarah, "Tell Titan he's my guardian angel," weighed on him, proof of the miracle they'd seen. The doctor, a weary man in his 50s with silver temples, lingered, scribbling on a chart. He glanced at James, his eyes warm. "That dog of yours," he said, nodding at Titan. "I've seen a lot, but this? Extraordinary. Sarah had a tear inside, bleeding fast. Without your dog, we wouldn't have caught it." James swallowed, pride swelling. "He's special, all right," he said, his voice thick. "Always has been." Titan lifted his head, his dark eyes gleaming as if sensing the praise. The doctor chuckled, shaking his head. "No idea how he did it," he said. "But he saved 2 lives today." The corridor hummed, nurses bustling, a phone ringing at the desk. James's thoughts drifted to the airport, Titan's frantic barking, Sarah's terrified face. He'd trusted Titan's instincts, but this was beyond training. It was a sixth sense, a gift no one could explain. The note burned in his pocket, his heart full of gratitude. The young nurse who'd given him the note approached, smiling shyly. "Sarah's awake, asking for that dog," she said, her voice gentle. James's eyes lit up, a grin cutting through his exhaustion. "That right?" he asked, glancing at Titan. "Reckon we'll visit her," Lad? Titan's tail thumped once, ears perking. The nurse laughed, her eyes bright. She calls him her hero, she said. Wants to thank him properly when she's stronger. The story of Titan's heroics spread like wildfire through Terminal 1. When James and Titan returned the next day, passengers and staff buzzed with the tale. A cleaner near Boots whispered, "That dog saved a mum and her baby." A barista at Costa, the faint whiff of coffee in the air, nudged her mate, pointing at Titan. "That's him, from yesterday." James felt quiet pride, but Titan patted on, calm as ever, focus unwavering. Weeks later, Sarah called the airport. Her voice, frail but warm, crackled through to James's supervisor. She'd named her son Oliver, meaning peace, for the calm Titan brought in her darkest moment. "I'll come back one day," she promised. "I need to hug that dog myself." James smiled, imagining it. He knew Titan would be stoic, but deep down, he felt the dog understood more than anyone knew. That night, in his Salford flat, James looked at Titan, sprawled on the rug. "You're my angel too, mate," he whispered. Titan's eyes met his, steady and wise, their bond.